Welcome. My name is John Brooker, and it is my great pleasure to be your host for this session, Discovering the Principles of Life, the Second Coming. For 2,000 years, questions have been raised concerning the second coming of the Messiah. When will he come? Will we recognize him? How will he come? In this session, we will discuss these questions and share with you some breaking news regarding the second coming. Let's begin with the question how. How will the Messiah come again? There has been some confusion about how this will happen. This is in part because prophecies found in the Bible contain some messages that are to be taken literally and others that are not to be taken literally, that are symbolic and are meant to convey a deeper meaning. For example, before Jesus' birth, the Bible in Daniel 7:13 predicted that he would come down from heaven. We know, of course, that Jesus was literally born as a baby on the earth, the son of Mary. What then does it mean when it says he will come down from heaven? In the Bible, the earth below is often a symbol of evil. Satan was cursed to eat the dust of the earth, and hell is depicted as a pit within the earth. By the same token, heaven or the sky above us has been a symbol of God, purity, and goodness. Therefore, the prophecy of the Messiah coming from above does not mean he will float down from the sky. It is telling us that he will not be like other people, born of sin. His origin will be of God. He will be born pure, without sin. Sadly, at the time of Jesus, John 6:41 through 42, some took the prophecy of the Messiah floating down from above literally and therefore refused to believe that Jesus could be the Messiah. We should be careful not to make that same mistake, because these same two prophecies of him being born of a woman and of coming down from the heavens were given concerning the second coming of the Messiah. In Revelations 12:5, it says he will be born of a woman, and in other passages, such as Matthew 24:30, it speaks of him coming on the clouds of heaven. The real problem here is that devoted members of the Christian faith have always believed in their hearts that Jesus himself will be the one to come again. They can't imagine that another person would be born as the Messiah. Part of this confusion comes from the fact that there are two kinds of second comings. One second coming has to do with the actual return of the person Jesus. This has happened many times since Jesus' resurrection. It is a spiritual phenomenon in which Jesus, sometimes visibly and sometimes invisibly, comes to people of faith in his heavenly form, the form that he took after he resurrected. This happened when Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene outside the tomb, and when he appeared to the disciples for 40 days. It happened when he appeared to Stephen, the first Christian martyr. It happened when he called St. Paul to his mission. It has happened countless times throughout Christian history. According to Jesus, his spiritual return or presence can happen every time 2 or 3 gather together in his name. This type of second coming, the return of Jesus, is important because it strengthens the faith of believers, but does not fix the fall. It is not able to restore God's ideal of creation in this world. This explains why, even though Jesus has appeared many times through the past 2,000 years, the world continues to be dominated by sin. St. Paul spoke in Romans 8:32 of a future in which our bodies will be redeemed and we will be adopted by the Messiah. For that to happen, a different kind of second coming needs to occur. This is the second coming that the book of Revelations 19:7 describes as a bridegroom who is to be married. This is the Messiah who comes to fix the mistake of Adam and Eve, who creates a family that is rooted in God's love. This Messiah will be born on the earth as it is stated in Revelations 12:5. He will have a physical body by which he will be able to take a wife, raise her up to be God's daughter, and together give birth to children. It may be difficult to accept that the second coming will be someone other than Jesus, who is born of a woman on this earth. This concept does not originate with Reverend Moon. This insight is given to us by Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. He explains this to us through the story of Elijah. Elijah was a prophet who lived hundreds of years before Jesus. He tried to bring the people back to God in order to prepare them for the Messiah, but he was not successful and was taken to heaven. Later, God spoke through the prophet Malachi and revealed that this Elijah would come back in order to prepare the way for the Messiah. What does this mean? How could Elijah come and work on the earth again after being gone for so many hundreds of years? Jesus gives us the answer to this question in Matthew 17:11 through 12. First, Jesus confirms that Elijah is to return. Then he explains that he has already returned, and that his return, his second coming, was fulfilled through the birth of another person who was not Elijah. That person, according to Jesus, was John the Baptist. How could John the Baptist be Elijah? He is not actually Elijah. However, he is in position of Elijah because he inherited Elijah's mission to prepare the way for the coming of the Messiah. Before John was born, an angel told John's father that John would go forth in the spirit and power of Elijah. We can compare this to a big corporation today. Elijah was the CEO, but he passed away. John the Baptist is the new CEO. He is not Elijah, but he is in the same position. The next question is when? When will it happen? When will the Messiah be born into this world? In the previous session, we examined 3 2,000-year periods of biblical history, from Adam to Abraham, from Abraham to Jesus, and from Jesus to the present. In that study, we were able to point out some remarkable parallels between the periods from Abraham to Jesus and from Jesus to the present. In conclusion, we pointed out that the parallel between the reform that took place centered on Malachi after the temple was rebuilt and the reform of the Christian faith that started in 1517 with Martin Luther, when the Bible was made available to people in their own language. 400 years after Malachi, Jesus was born. This would indicate that the birth of the Messiah in our age was to take place somewhere close to 1917, which is 400 years after Luther began the Reformation. 1917 takes us to the middle of the World War I and the beginning of the first communist revolution in Russia. Let's take a look at the world wars. They will give us some insight into the timing of the Messiah's coming. In our view, there have been not 2, but 3 world wars. The first being World War I, the second being World War II, and the third being the rise of communism and the war that was waged on freedom and on people of faith. In each of these conflicts, there were countries that represented the position of Cain. Those nations that were more distant from God's will, and countries that represented the position of Abel, that were closer to God's will. In Adam's family, Cain killed Abel, thus preventing God from sending the Messiah at that time. On the world scale, if the Abel group of nations can avoid being killed by the Cain group of nations, God would be able to send the Messiah. This is why World War I is so significant for God's providence. In World War I, the central powers were Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey. They represented the old imperial regimes of the past. They were in the Cain position. The Allies, USA, England, and France, were the young Christian democracies in the Abel position. If the Central Powers had prevailed, God's providence would have been prolonged, but they did not. Eventually, in 1919, At the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, the Central Powers in the Kane position surrendered to the Allies in the position of able. Because of this worldwide condition, the Messiah could be born into this world. Not long after 1919. This is very exciting. With the Messiah on earth, the forces of evil became more desperate to destroy God's foundation. World War II was the most incredible war. Evil rose up in the world as never before. Hitler was a false Messiah, an Antichrist who brought death to millions of God's people. In the end, the Allies were victorious, and when the war ended in 1945, the Messiah was able to begin his ministry. At that time, the third and final Kane camp emerged. These were the leaders of the communist world. Like Stalin, under him millions of people were put to death. The communist states made a focused effort to destroy religious faith. In Russia, churches were turned into museums of atheism. In China, Mao replaced God with the communist heads of state, glorifying them almost as Christians would glorify Christ. It was God's plan that at this time the Messiah would appear bringing God's truth, a truth that would uplift and empower Christianity and all people of faith to establish God's ideal on the earth. Formerly, Christianity did not offer a way to establish heaven on the earth. Its focus was on the heaven that would come only after we die. Such a movement would have been able to inspire the youth of the world and prevent them from being misled by the communist dogma. By the 1950s, communism would have begun to fall, and a new culture based on freedom, the love of God, and mutual cooperation would have begun to emerge. However, after World War II, we don't seem to see the appearance of the Messiah. There is no ideal, no heavenly world. Why? 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 After World War II, in the 40 years from 1945 until 1985, did communism become stronger? Why did the Christian nations begin to decline spiritually? Why did they become worse with the rise in the use of drugs, free sex, secularism, and the breakdown of the family? Why did these things happen? It is because the Messiah who was in need in the world was not received by the world. What happened to Jesus 2,000 years ago happened all over again. The people who were chosen to prepare the way rejected the Messiah. Like Jesus, he was condemned to die. In a communist concentration camp, he was tortured and spent years in prison. But at this time, the Messiah did not die. He survived and began his ministry once again, but without the support of the worldwide Christian community. He persevered and gradually over time was able to gather disciples. He and his bride were blessed in marriage and were able to establish God's family in this world. On that foundation, they, as a couple, have been able to give the blessing of God to thousands of families throughout the world, to every nation, race, and culture. This is the breaking news of this age, that the Messiah and his bride, the true parents of humankind, are building God's ideal on this earth, one family under God. Now your question must be, who is he? Who is this person and his bride? In Matthew 7:16, Jesus urged us to be careful not to follow false prophets. At that time, he told us that we would know who was true and who was false by their fruits. We should take note that he did not say that we would recognize the true one because he is the one that floats down on a cloud. If Jesus was planning to return coming down on a cloud, he would have told us not to worry, that it would be easy to recognize him. But no, he taught that we must examine their fruits. This further confirms that the Messiah will be a person born into this world, and that we will know who he is by his fruits. A good tree will always produce fruits of true love, and an evil true will produce evil fruits. To conclude our session today, let's consider what qualities should we look for in him, in this person, this living Messiah. Number 1, this person as God's true Son must be able to reveal to us the true heart of God. Because this person is God's Son, God will be able to reveal to him his sorrow as the parent of all humanity, who lost his children and who has been forced to watch all the evil we have committed throughout history. Number 2, this person must be able to reveal to us God's original heart at the time of creation and the original purpose for which he created us. Number 3, this person must reveal to us the true nature of the original sin. He must expose that crime that separated our first ancestors from God and separated all later generations from God's love. Number 4, this person must reveal to us the true mission and heart of Jesus. Jesus must anoint this person and reveal to him his heart. Number 5, this person must show us how God has been working in and through other religions as well to bring salvation to humanity. Number 6, this person must raise up a bride and establish a family through which God's love can flow to all people, no matter their religious or cultural background. Finally, number 7, this person and his bride must love all people with God's sacrificial love as the parents of all mankind, and they must be able to give God's blessings to all families, enabling all people to form one family under God. This is the meaning of salvation. These qualities will show you who the returning Messiah is. Thank you for studying with us. I pray that you will find God's will for your life and that you will receive his abundant blessings.